Do you suffer from painful, heavy periods, PMS, mood swings, or migraines? Are you tired of being told they are just normal parts of life? Or are you afraid your child's going to suffer these symptoms too? At Vividis, the full of life company, we take the pain, misery, and confusion out of those menstrual cycles and replace them with tools of empowerment and time management so you can be Vividis. Visit embracingflowpodcast.com for more information on transforming your cycles from ow to wow. Information shared on the Embracing Flow podcast is for educational purposes only. It does not constitute medical advice.
Ever felt frustrated being told PMS, heavy bleeding, and cramping are just normal parts of life? You're not alone. I loathed my monthly cycle for decades. That all changed when I earned 3 health coaching certifications discovering something incredible. Your period is vital. It is an outward sign of your inner health, and it holds the key to unlocking your full potential. I've been there battling heavy, painful periods, and I turn them into cycles with minimal PMS and cramping. Today, I'm on a mission to share that information with you. Pour a cup of your favorite drink, get comfy, and grab your headphones as we embark on a candid and empowering journey of self-discovery. Together, we'll demystify menstrual cycles, explore cyclical living, delve into natural birth control, and guide parents through those crucial period talks with tweens and teens. It's time to break the taboo around menstruation and embrace the wisdom it holds. I'm your host, Heather Almendinger, and this is the Embracing Flow podcast.
Welcome and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Embracing Flow. I'd like to introduce our guest today, an expert at Embracing Flow, Dr. David Bilstrom. Welcome. How are you today?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, Heather.
There is a reason why I have Dr. Bilstrom on today. He is an author, international speaker, and distinguished member of the American Academy of Integrative Medicine and American Academy of Medical Acupuncture. He is an advanced fellow in anti-aging, regenerative, and functional medicine, and holds a quadruple board certification in functional and regenerative medicine, integrative medicine, physical medicine and rehabilitation, and medical acupuncture. As the director of the International Autoimmune Institute and Bingham Memorial Center for Functional Medicine, Dr. Bilstrom is affiliated with the first medical center in the country associated with the teaching hospital to treat all types of autoimmune diseases. The center of the first in the nation to utilize nature and its healing properties as a fundamental component of a wellness program. Dr. Bilstrom is passionate about educating individuals and medical professionals on the importance of reversing and preventing autoimmune diseases using the fundamentals of functional medicine, instead of relying solely on symptom-controlled medications that may lead to additional health complications. There is so much more that we can go into, but I'm going to let your words of wisdom in our communication go into more depth. And if they would like to read more about your accomplishments, everything will be in the show notes. I'm blown away by everything that you've been able to do, especially your work in autoimmune diseases. And before we go too far into how all that works, what exactly is an autoimmune disease and how did you get into all this?
Oh, well, thank you. So let me say that 80% of people that get autoimmune disease are women. And there's some very specific reasons why that is that we'll be able to touch on today, including it is so entwined with all the teaching that you do and the interests you do. And so there's an absolute epidemic of autoimmune disease. I was doing it in private practice, and I read this absolutely heart-wrenching article in the New York Times about a woman, famous journalist, who was losing her career and her life to lupus, one of the autoimmune diseases. And the story that she told that was so sad was absolutely typical. I heard it 1,000 times already. Not feeling well, have all these health issues, getting worse and worse. Went from one doc to another doc, 5 doctors, 7 doctors. 3 to 5 years later, feeling even worse. And then you finally get a diagnosis of lupus, let's say, these autoimmune diseases, or really truly any chronic disease. And then you kind of ask, well, geez, why did I get this? And usually people are told, well, we have no idea why you got it. Well, how can you make it go away? There's no way. You can't get rid of it. You're going to have it the rest of your life. The best we can offer you is a medicine that will put a bandage on a few symptoms. And that's kind of the typical thing. But in autoimmune disease, the bandage typically is an immunosuppressant medication that's going to suppress your immune system. And the overactive part of it that's attacking your body part, we can kind of suppress that a little bit. But oh, by the way, because we're suppressing your immune system, you're going to have a much higher risk of getting cancer, a life-threatening infection that no amount of antibiotics could save you from dying from this infection. And oh, by the way, as a side effect of these meds, they can actually give you a new autoimmune disease. So you start attacking a new body part as time goes on. But because they don't fix the root cause, you just keep getting worse and worse. And this poor woman losing her life and her career to this lupus. And then I said, this is ridiculous. I've heard this 1,000 times. Somebody has to change the way autoimmune disease is dealt with worldwide. People need to know that we know where this stuff comes from. When you ask and you say, where did I get this? And you're told we have no idea. Well, that just means that person that may have had the expertise in diagnosing you and telling you what your disease name is, they just don't know where it comes from. When you ask them, how can I make it go away? They say, you can't, you got it forever. That just means they don't know how to make it go away. And truly, the science is really clear, not only on why this happens, but also, how to reverse it. And also the science is very clear on how you can prevent it in the first place. And so we're trying not only to teach people why and how to reverse it, but in the perfect world, we're teaching people how to prevent it in the first place.
I love that you're going back to the root of it and letting people know that there is a way to reverse it, or even just reduce the symptoms of it. Because that's the biggest thing that comes across is, I'm tired of feeling tired. I'm tired of feeling in pain and all the symptoms that go along with the different autoimmune diseases that are out there. And you mentioned that women have a high rate of autoimmune diseases. Why is that?
Yeah. And so there's two main reasons why we believe that is. One is one particular hormone imbalance called estrogen dominance. And hormones keep away inflammation. By keeping away inflammation, they keep away disease. So like women in their lifetime will make 3 different estrogens, 2 every day of once you start your menstrual cycles every day of your life, and then 1 only during pregnancy. But estradiol, one of the important estrogens, for example, will prevent heart attacks and strokes. It prevents cataracts and macular degeneration. Super great for your eyes. Prevents osteoporosis, prevents fine lines and wrinkles in your skin. It keeps the gut healthy. The gut needs estrogens. All these body parts need estrogen. But sometimes the balance of hormones is almost more important than what one is doing individually. And so this is how it is with this estrogen dominance. Too much estrogen compared to progesterone. Now, progesterone also is a good example of how hormones do so much more than we give them credit for. So here's every cell in your body has a progesterone receptor. And you go, well, geez, that's kind of cool that every cell in my body needs it. And if it didn't have a receptor, it wouldn't need it. But then you hear women being told, oh, you don't need progesterone because you've had your uterus removed. And it's like, well, that person's forgotten that the basic textbooks for obstetric gynecology, one of the first things they talk about is every cell in your body has progesterone receptors. And so progesterone, great for your brain, great for your eyes, great for your bones, great for your sleep, great for creating calm, all these different kind of things. But the imbalance is so problematic. And I call estrogen dominance the most dangerous disease for women. And the reason I say that is it is a huge driver of chronic health issues for women. We have all these autoimmune diseases that are kind of classic ones like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, psoriasis, all these. And historically, what these autoimmune diseases are is our immune system should make antibodies to attack things that are not us, that are going to hurt us. So like if a cold virus gets into our system, that's not us. It's just going to try to make us feel sick. So the immune system makes an antibody specifically to kill that bad bug and kick it out of our system. So that when we get a cold virus in us, we don't have it for 20 years. We'd have a cold for 5 days, kind of a thing. But the traditional kind of autoimmune thing is that the body becomes confused and we make antibodies attacking our own body parts. And it is never a good idea to attack our own body parts and hurt them. You're basically self-destructing. If you want to stay healthy, rule of thumb, don't be self-destructing, right? Super counterproductive. So like you can attack the thyroid, make the thyroid beat up. Well, now you have Hashimoto's and you might need thyroid medicine because your thyroid can't make it. Or rheumatoid arthritis, you attack the joints, you start destroying the joints, they become red, hot, swollen, really painful kind of a thing. Now, there's another part of the immune system that's involved in inflammation control, controlling inflammation. And we now realize that so many chronic health issues that we didn't think were immune system and autoimmune actually are, such as heart attacks and strokes and osteoporosis and Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia. Even 70% of all autism is one particular autoimmune disease. But because we know where this stuff comes from and how to reverse it, we're actually in a position to reverse all this stuff or prevent it. But a super big driver of all these things I mentioned, including this disruption of the immune system that drives all autoimmune, but also is a huge driver of cancer, because cancer is just the flip side of the same coin that's autoimmune disease, both immune system issues, is this estrogen dominance. And what we're trying to teach people is what estrogen dominance looks like before you ever get to the cancer and the autoimmune disease. And typically there's two major sort of categories. So all hormonal menstrual things, whether it's bad flows, bad cramps, premenstrual syndrome, ovarian cyst, polycystic ovarian, fibroids, endometriosis, fibrocystic breast disease, infertility, that's all the hormonal menstrual things. That always has this estrogen dominance component to it. Too much estrogen, not enough progesterone, drives all the hormonal menstrual things. And you go, oh my gosh, that is so common nowadays. Now, a couple of generations ago, women had menstrual cycles. They came regular as all get out, no big deal, no bad cramping, no bad flows. You get to menopause. How'd you know you have menopause? Well, I just stopped having my flows one day and then it was over. And you're like, wow, that is how it's supposed to work. That is so uncommon nowadays. It's almost, well, what woman doesn't have this estrogen dominance hormonal menstrual stuff? But also because estrogen revs and progesterone calms, if you get too much estrogen relative to progesterone, you have rev without calm. And so it shows up as excessive worry, anxiety, insomnia, could even be panic attacks. And then you look at that and you go like, oh my gosh, there's an epidemic of that as well. Almost what woman doesn't have some of that stuff going on. And so if you're a woman with any of the hormonal menstrual stuff, rev without calm stuff, you know you have estrogen dominance. Now, it's so important though to recognize that so that it can be turned around and get rid of that stuff, because nobody needs any of the hormonal menstrual stuff. Every one of those things stinks. Nobody needs a rev without calm. Every one of those stinks. But we also know that because this is such a big disruptor of the immune system, this is the big reason, one of the two big reasons why 80% of the people that get autoimmune disease are women. But we also know that women that have this estrogen dominance before menopause have a 5.4 times greater risk of getting breast cancer before menopause, not doubling your risk of breast cancer before menopause, not tripling it, but over a 5 times greater risk of breast cancer before menopause and a 10 times greater risk of malignant cancers your whole life. The kind that start one place and metastasize other places, the real stinky ones. Mm-hmm. And we're like, okay, people need to know the significance of these menstrual issues and the rev without calm issues, because they don't need this stuff in their life, let alone what it's going to lead to if we don't kind of turn it around. And so this is why it's so important for the work that you're doing to educate people on menstrual cycles, their significance, but also the significance of how when they get disrupted, it is not a good thing to disrupt the menstrual cycle. But this estrogen dominance is a humongous driver of that.
And I've heard that you had mentioned about progesterone receptors in every cell. We also have estrogen receptors in every cell, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so with what you're saying, hormonal birth control really is not a viable way to really help estrogen dominance, is it? Or is hormonal birth control a good way to help with estrogen dominance?
When it depends what you're using it for, especially if you're using it to try to deal with this estrogen dominance, these hormonal menstrual things, it actually just makes things worse. Basically when you do the hormonal menstrual, hormonal birth control pills, you basically put somebody in menopause. Well, Well, then when you're in menopause, you don't have bad flows, bad cramps anymore because you don't, that flow was right. And menopause is totally right at the right time of your life. That's how it's supposed to happen, but not before it's supposed to happen. But also because those oral birth control pills are estrogen based, it just makes the estrogen dominance worse. And then what happens oftentimes is now things have gotten so darn bad that a woman's told, well, I think the only option you have is a hysterectomy. Well, you got to do what you got to do to get through your day. And if you're having this excessive bleeding, I mean, I bleed, stories of bleeding for 6 months in a row. I'm anemic. I need iron infusions. You're like, oh my goodness, you can't even get off the couch, can't go to work. But maybe that's what you need. But also, any change in the anatomy down there actually makes the estrogen dominance worse again. So one ovary comes out, everything else stays in, it makes it worse. Both ovaries come out, uterus stays in, it's worse. Ovaries stay in, uterus comes out, makes it worse. Even having your tubes tied compromises the blood flow, decreases blood flow by about 30% to the ovaries. It makes things worse. And so you can get this maybe false sense of security that, well, I don't even have a uterus anymore. I don't have all this stuff going on. Well, no, the estrogen dominance is even worse. And this is where you're really moving to the autoimmune diseases of cancer. And now, because we know that immune system is part of all this stuff, this is osteoporosis and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and dementia, all those kind of cruddy things as well.
So you mentioned some of the symptoms of estrogen dominance, with the hormones and the bleeding and the cramping and the heavy flows or the missing flows. What are some natural ways that we can, if we're noticing these symptoms, and we want to improve those symptoms, what are some natural ways that we can go about doing this? Or is it something that just we have to find a regenerative specialist or functional medicine doctor to be able to reduce these symptoms?
The body is so smart when it comes to healing that, yes, yes. And I think it's important to know, if you're going to know what I need to do maybe to reverse this, or would be the same thing you want to do to probably prevent it, is how does this happen? So when you look at this amazing hormone symphony in women, many, many hormones, all individually very important, but they all have to kind of be working together, well balanced, right? So if you think of a symphony orchestra, everybody is great. Everybody's got to kind of work together, though, be really good balance. All it takes is one, like somebody in the woodwind section, to be messing up, and it messes everybody else up, right? And so one hormone's really good at throwing everybody else off. And so these hormones we're talking about, like estrogens, progesterone, but also testosterone, DHEA, pregnenolone, they call it the brain hormone, and cortisol, are all part of the same hormone production cascade called the steroid-ogenic hormone production cascade. Now, one thing that's important to know is the liver makes cholesterol. Cholesterol is the mother of all hormones, and they call it that because you need cholesterol to make all these hormones. If the liver decides to make extra cholesterol, you can bet your bottom dollar it's because it's trying to fix a hormone deficiency or hormone imbalance. It's giving you more of the mother to try to fix this hormone imbalance, rather than, oh, this is this terrible, cholesterol is terrible. It's like, well, no, you need it. You'd be dead without it, because without it, you couldn't make these hormones. You'd be dead. So cortisol, the stress hormone, though, and hopefully we can get maybe a little touch on the HPA axis here and how to reset that, is cortisol, the stress hormone, is designed to deal with stress. It's this fight or flight mode, life or death mode. It's really designed for intermittent stress, which oftentimes is more emotional stress. It goes up when you're emotionally stressed, it comes down, it goes up, it comes down, it goes up to help you deal with stress, including cortisol in your body should convert to cortisone, which is a steroid hormone your body makes to get rid of inflammation. We use steroids all the time in medicine, and they help you feel better. But when they help you feel better, you go, well, geez, why do I need a steroid from the outside? Whether it's a cortisone cream, or here's a steroid inhaler for your asthma, or shoot it up your nose, or I'm going to shoot your knee with it, or if you're bad all over, we'll give you prednisone. Hey, I feel better. You go, well, begs the question, why do I need a steroid from the outside? Why am I not making enough steroids on the inside? Why am I not taking my cortisol and efficiently converting it to cortisone? Well, cortisol's gotten stuck in the stress mode. And when it's stuck in the stress mode, it becomes very inefficient in making this conversion to cortisone to get rid of inflammation. And here we start getting inflammation, one thing after another, after another. And so physical stress, the things that drive chronic disease, like vitamin deficiencies, hormone imbalances, um, uh, hormone deficiencies, environmental toxins, disrupted intestinal microbiome, foods irritating me when I don't know it, and I'm eating them every day and they're creating inflammation. Those physical stressors kick cortisol up into the stress mode, but because those physical stressors are 24-hour a day, 7-day a week things, it gets stuck. Well, then when it gets stuck, what cholesterol does, it has to shunt to cortisol production, high cortisol production, and you stop making these other hormones. The very first one you stop making is progesterone. So progesterone starts dropping, even though estrogen's perfect. Well, here you got estrogen dominance starting. And so this is where trying to create calm in the body is so vitally important. We want to keep cortisol out of the stress mode into the calm mode. So deep breathing, meditation, repetitive prayer, progressive muscle relaxation, your yogas, your tai chis. We talk a lot about nature, and I want to, if I can, talk about how we can use sunlight, getting our eyes to actually do this. Okay, reset the stress response in the body, and so progesterone drops. Well, then we get a lot of messed up guts in our world. We're a society of messed up guts, and here's antibiotics, here's all these meds, here's stress throws off the gut, all this kind of stuff. The gut gets leaky. So you hear this thing about leaky gut, more technically it's intestinal permeability disorder. So there's things that are in our intestines, like vitamin and minerals from our food, proteins from our food, good fatty acids from our food that should get absorbed from the intestines through the or the lining of the intestine into the bloodstream, go all over. All these things our body needs to be healthy. Well, there's toxic stuff in our guts also. So every cell in our body makes these toxic byproducts and metabolism every day. Got to run our detox pathways, got to dump them into the gut, got to poop them in the toilet, including estrogens. So when the ovaries make healthy new estrogens, let's say like men are, when we're going to start their cycles, the ovaries make estrogen for the first time. Well, the ovaries just don't go, okay, I'm done. I made estrogens. I'm never going to do that again for the next 70 years. It's like, no, dudes. No. You got to make healthy new estrogens all the time, because once these estrogens are in our system for a while, they get dinged. They get beat up. Now they become irritating and toxic to the system. You got to run your detox pathways, dump toxic old estrogens into the gut, and poop them in the toilet. Well, if you're constipated, if you're not pooping at least every day, those toxic estrogens and other toxins in your system are sitting there so long, they recycle back into the bloodstream. But if you got the leaky gut, they are reactivated and reabsorbed back into the bloodstream, and they start building over time. Well, now you got that double whammy of too much estrogen, old toxic ones, not enough progesterone. Oh my gosh, there's this estrogen down, it's just whacking the entire system. And so you want to have a healthy gut. And so here's things like, probiotics or fermented foods. Here's things that I shouldn't do. Like I try to avoid antibiotics, Motrins and Advils, acid blocking medicines, other kind of things that tend to disrupt the gut, make it leaky. And I'm going to mention something about light that we can use also for the intestinal microbiome that makes the good bad bugs in the gut. So trying to keep a really healthy gut helps you detox. And then that keeps those old toxic estrogens from accumulating over time. So now we're kind of get your gut healthy, create calm in the system. Right there, that goes a long way to sort of putting the system in a good place where you don't accumulate old toxic estrogens, you don't use your progesterone, and all these kind of things.
I'm absorbing all of this because a lot of this I let my audience know, but it's great hearing it from you, because I know a lot of individuals that are dealing with estrogen dominance and have been told so many different ways of what to do, what not to do, what foods to eat, what foods not to eat. And I don't know if they realize how important it is to balance those, and how it's, even though you may go and get a blood test and you may find out that your estrogen is normal, you may still have estrogen dominance
It's
because it's
probably the old
higher than
crappy
the
stuff. It's
progesterone.
probably a lot of old crappy stuff, not the good healthy stuff.
Yep. So it is having those bowel movements because we do need to get that nasty estrogen out. I've read at some point with fiber that I know the daily recommendation is usually up to 25 grams. I've read in other sources though that between like 22 and 25 grams is almost too much. It gets rid of the good estrogen, and then we go into estrogen deficiency. Is there accuracy with that, or is it does fiber really help with removing the bad estrogen and helping align those hormones so that way we are
Yeah.
making that progesterone?
So before menopause, the good estrogens come from the ovaries and they release it in the bloodstream, goes all over. It only gets into the gut once it's toxic crap. And so if you're using fiber to bind toxins, you're not going to be binding the good healthy estrogens. That's not where they hang out. They hang out in the bloodstream. And then after menopause, when the ovaries do shut down, and because they've been doing the work for 3, 4 decades, time to retire. You can't blame them, right? Well, now because the ovaries don't make estrogen, women still need to make it, but in a different way. So they take these adrenal hormones, the adrenal gland sitting on top of the kidney, like DHEA, super important one for your brain, super important one for bone health, keeps away heart attacks and strokes. Actually used to be a prescription medicine for joint pain before ibuprofen was invented. DHEA is released by your adrenal gland, goes to the cells of the body. They convert it to just testosterone, and then testosterone gets converted to the estrogens. So the production of estrogens happens on the cellular level after menopause. Once again, that's happening outside of the gut. So I don't never heard that too much fiber could actually bind up good estrogens, because that's not where the good ones hang. They don't hang in the gut. So when you take the fiber, you're feeding the good bacteria in the gut. Good guys rise, right? That's their food, so they can grow and be healthy and happy and help us. But then you're also binding up toxins so that they don't get reabsorbed into the system. You bind them up until you do poop them into the toilet, kind of a thing. Yeah.
Right.
So that's where the high fiber foods come in as well.
So the bad poop sits in our colon, and we try and get it out through our gut, and the good stays in our bloodstream.
Yeah.
With the adrenals, is that somewhat where also because the testosterone's then changed into estrogen, if I understood correctly,
On the cellular level.
on the cellular level, is that kind of where some of the excess hair when we go through menopause, or from perimenopause, we notice the hairs on the chin, the excess weight, that the typical menopause, perimenopause symptoms, is that kind of what's going on, that there's a mix up between the testosterone and the good estrogen?
And the balance is really important. Yeah. So a lot of what you're mentioning, like even though when we kind of see dark hairs in the chin and the face, and when we're thinking immediately testosterone, that can be cortisol. A lot of times it's cortisol, and then the weight gain is cortisol. When you're stuck in the stress mode, it's hard to shut the brain off, and you can't shut the brain off. I can't fall asleep. I wake up, my brain gets running. So here's the insomnia. Here's the excessive worry and anxiety and all this kind of stuff. The body is so smart when it comes to also these dark hairs on the faces. So women need testosterone just not as much as a guy, just like guys need estrogen not as much as a woman. So when your body makes testosterone, that, let's say, so there's a hormone called dihydrotestosterone, which we call the dude hormone, because only dudes should have it. Okay. So you have testosterone, I have testosterone. Well, how does your body know if it's supposed to take that testosterone and turn it into the dude hormone, dihydrotestosterone, for you and me? Well, because it shouldn't do it for you, but it should do it for me, right? Well, how does it know not to do it for you? Progesterone. So if you have progesterone, that blocks the enzyme that converts testosterone to dihydrotestosterone, so that a woman doesn't make dihydrotestosterone, all the dark hairs and all that goes with that, right? Well, what happens if you're depleted in progesterone? It's like your body thinks you're a dude, and it's like, hey, we better make this dihydrotestosterone because we got a dude here. And we're like, no, you don't. No, you're getting all confused here. And so this is where this hormone balance is so important. Everything kind of feeds off everything else.
And I thank you for explaining that because I know I see it as I'm thinking, oh yeah, I have been overly stressed over the last few years. Um, and I see it even in younger women that we're we've gotten into a stress society.
Mm,
So
yeah.
we've got to learn to reduce that cortisol. We've got to go back into self-care. And I've said before, self-care is not selfish. It is a necessity. How beneficial is tracking our cycles uh when if they need to come and they'd like to see you? How beneficial is tracking the cycle so that way is it beneficial to see where they're at? Is it okay to just do the bare bones basics with, okay, I get my period this day and it's this length. Um, I have this much bleeding and then this is how long my cycle is. Or as a physician, being able to really see the estrogen rise if we're having ovulation, how long the luteal phase is. Um, just because I know a lot of individuals use the apps and I'm a paper tracker because I get a lot more information out of my paper than I do in an app and I can see it very, very clearly versus on an app. So and I hear people, oh, I track on an app. So if they're having estrogen dominance, if they're coming and they want to talk to you about their hormonal issues, is there a better way? Is tracking beneficial? And is there a better way to track? What information would you be looking for to help them kind of move for faster through the process, or is there a good way to do it?
Yeah, thank you. I think what you're saying is the body is amazingly complex, right? There's a lot that goes into this stuff, right? Um, but what's also important is you want to remember that the central mechanisms of all health or ill health are probably the most important. So when it comes to this estrogen dominance, it runs in families. A lot of women have it, but it shows up in different people different ways. And so, like, if I'm seeing a woman and I see from her family history that one family member had breast cancer, I go, well, there's estrogen. No. And somebody else has an autoimmune disease. Well, there's estrogen dominance. Well, then here's somebody with bad flows. Here's somebody with bad cramps. Here's somebody with fibroids. Here's somebody with fibrocystic breast disease. They go, well, my family has a lot of stuff, but they're all different. They go, well, no, no, actually, they're all the same. They're just showing up in different people, different ways, right? And so when you're talking about all these different things that can go wrong, we're going like, well, it's all coming from the same thing. Okay, just showing up different people, different ways. So ideally, if you're going to test the hormones, there's two estrogens to test for, estradiol and estrone. They kind of call it the good estrogen and the not so good estrogen. Estrone, when they say not so good, it's actually very important. Just don't want too much because it's so powerful. It is really great for preventing heart attacks and strokes, really great for preventing osteoporosis, but too much of it is really irritating the breast tissue and can drive you to breast cancer. So you got estradiol, estrone, progesterone. What I want to say, simple test. Any lab in the world can run these things. But you can't just look at the woodwind section of the orchestra and think you know everything. You want to see the whole symphony, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you also want to check testosterone. You want to check that DHEA I mentioned. You want to check that pregnenolone. We call it the mother hormone, actually. You want to look at the thyroid closely, okay? And these kind of things. And to see the entire symphony, okay? And you go, okay, now I see the symphony. Okay, who's messing everybody else up here, kind of a thing. And ideally, when you want to look at estrogen progesterone levels, you can track all month long. There's saliva tests you can do this and other kind of things. What we ask women to do is do it between day 19, day 19, 20, or 21 of the cycle. That's this window of opportunity. We get a really good sense of that estrogen progesterone balance. Now, sometimes if women aren't having any cycles, maybe they're on birth control pills, maybe something else, you can do it any day. It doesn't really matter. Okay. If your cycles are super crazy, 7 days and 96 days and 14 days, it's like, well, just do it. Okay. There's never going to be a perfect time with you because you're never perfect. You're never good. So every day is just basically the same as the others. And you kind of, they go, oh, well, I did my blood test and 2 days later I started my flow. You kind of take that in consideration. Um, but you can see this stuff. You see it and, always what we say is you don't need to be perfect. You just got to be perfect enough. And it even comes with maybe the timing of tests. And so it gives you a really good sense of what you got going on. Now, it's also really important to know that running the right test is important, but interpretation is very important as well. And so when you do a blood test, you get 3 columns of information: name of the test, your result, and what they call the range. People tend to treat the range like that's where the healthy people are. And women will be told, well, you may be feeling really crummy and have all this stuff going on, but your lab that I ran, your result is in the range. You're great, you're healthy. And you're like, well, why did my lab say I'm great and healthy when I obviously don't feel that way? Well, actually, the reference ranges are based on statistics. And whenever you test something, a bunch of it, you get a distribution that looks like a bell-shaped curve. So if we test the height of 100 different people, there's a couple people really short, a couple people really tall, more people in the middle. So you get this bell-shaped curve. Super arbitrarily, labs say, well, we're going to do it this way. We're going to say that everybody that falls within 2 standard deviations of the means right down the middle, 50% above, 50% less, whatever you're testing, we're going to say that's our range. Well, by definition, 95% of all results falls within 2 standard deviations of the mean. So if you get flagged on a blood test, you pretty much automatically know you're the 5 worst out of 100. You fell out of the range. You're an F on your test. If you're in the range, it just means you're someplace between a D minus and an A plus. You're part of that 95% of people that are going to fall within the range. So your body loves A's, good with B's, does not like C's and D's at all, but absolutely hates F's. But this is where you can be well within the range and still be far from where you have to be really healthy. And so this is where people are going to be told, oh, your labs look great. Well, either they're looking in the wrong place or their interpretation's wrong. And so, like, for example, in my book, where I'm trying to teach people this, I say, well, these are the labs to run, but this is how you, as the person that had your blood work drawn, you can actually interpret this yourself. I will tell you where the perfect range is that you want to be healthy. And if you're not there, that's why you're not feeling healthy. Even if you're in the range, you hear this a lot, like women will say, oh, they checked my thyroid and they said, you're almost out of the range. You're almost out of the range on the very low end, but you're fine. I go, well, you were just told you're a D minus. You weren't quite an F, but you're a D minus. And so this is where that interpretation is so great. But then also, kind of to your point, you got this whole symphony going on. It's messing everything up. Well, how do you kind of get it all going in the right direction at the same time? So we talked about a couple of things, but there is a really important axis in the body called the HPA axis, called the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal gland, sits on top of the kidney, makes cortisol, DHEA, HPA axis. HPA axis is how the body responds to perceived stress or real stress. And you want to have a really healthy HPA axis. Okay. The whole world might be crashing down around you. You're totally chill. That stress hasn't gotten in you, is not dragging you down. Or a disrupted HPA axis, even the littlest things or maybe nothing, and it totally whacks the stress response. Stress response kicks in and everything goes haywire, including it throws off the entire symphony orchestra. The HPA axis is vitally important for healthy immune system health, gut health, you name it, kind of health. And so this is where you can try to reset it with, like, deep breathing, meditation, resetting cortisol, trying to find that calm mode with some of the supplements they call adrenal adaptogens, for example, getting rid of things that are causing physical stress, like my vitamin D is terrible, my gut's disrupted, I got this estrogen dominance. So we talk a lot about nature. And what I did 9 years ago is I put together this compendium of about 60 different articles, scientific articles about how nature helps human health and well-being, because it's so fundamental to our health and well-being, including if people that get their gallbladder taken out if their recovery room overlooks a green space, nature, they have less post-op complications, less post-op infections. They go home earlier compared to staring at a wall, right, in a closed room. And you go, wow, that's pretty cool. Just like having a window to look out makes that difference. I go, yeah, nature and humans really work. But now we're understanding this is really cool science called photobiomodulation, how light impacts human health and well-being. And so I was real fortunate. My wife, Jody, and I, we got a chance to lecture in Paris a few weeks ago, and I got to talk about this stuff. And so the back of our eyes, we have is our retina. So some of those retinal cells are the rods and cones. They call them image-forming retinal cells. Light hits those image-forming retinal cells. Information goes up to the part of the brain called the visual cortex, so we can see images. Like I'm seeing you. Hopefully, a lot of people will see this. But there's also non-image forming retinal cells. But they do, light hits them, they project to all these other parts of the brain. Parts involved in emotions, like the amygdala, parts involved in mood, parts involved in feeding. Do we overeat even though we already had enough food? The part of the brain involved in circadian rhythm, the 24-hour cycle. And that turns out to be vitally important because pretty much every body part we have is on a 24-hour cycle, including that intestinal microbiome, the mix of good, bad bugs in the gut. So it really helps the gut, but also it projects to the hypothalamus. And then that starts resetting that HPA axis so our body can deal with stress better. Terrible stuff going on. It doesn't make me feel bad and drag me down. I can deal with anything and it's not going to make me sick, wear me down, that kind of stuff. But then also all these other kind of cool things happen, including a lot more serotonin. It optimizes mitochondrial function, which is a super central mechanism in how the body deals with inflammation and clears inflammation, including immune system health. So people are reading a lot about how important the mitochondria is. This is that. Now, also, though, when that same light hits our abdomen, the infrared spectrum, which is the primary one for the eyes, the far infrared and infrared, the infrared spectrum, when it hits our abdomen, it goes past our abdominal wall into the intestines and optimizes the intestinal microbiome. Good bacterial numbers go up, bad bacterial numbers go down, including good bacterial numbers that tend to make butyrate, which is a really important thing good bacteria should make in our gut, called the short chain fatty acid. Butyrate prevents cancer 5 different ways. It keeps away cataracts and macular degeneration. It keeps the lungs healthy. It actually helps kids with cystic fibrosis. It helps brains recover after strokes. It does all this amazing things. You have more cells to make that. The light hits the genes in these butyrate producing good bacteria. 3 different genes are upregulated, they're more active. These cells can make more butyrate. Butyrate then is released by the good bacteria, goes to the intestinal wall where the butyrate receptors are. The butyrate receptors become more sensitive when light hits them. Butyrate attaches even more strongly. Lining of the gut makes serotonin, the feel-good neurotransmitter, GABA, the calming neurotransmitter, melatonin, that's good for everything. And you go, oh my gosh, this is why we're telling patients 2 or more minutes of early morning sun within the first 3 hours after sunrise. No sunglasses, no sunscreen on your abdomen. All it takes is 2 minutes. You can do a little more if you want. But that is so unbelievably therapeutic for HPA axis brain function. And this is such a central mechanism that when a woman's pregnant with a child during pregnancy, the developing baby, you got a handsome boy back there. But then the early second trimester during the pregnancy, the baby's eyes have already formed these non-image forming retinal cells. Babies can see light. They don't have the rods and cones yet, but early in the second trimester, baby's eyes can see light. They hit these non-image forming retinal cells, project all this information to make healthy brains, healthy HPA access. And probably because even before a child's born, they're developing that intestinal microbiome. It doesn't just come after a delivery. They're developing good bacteria, bad bacteria mix in the gut. probably it helps that either directly or because the light's hitting the mom's intestine during pregnancy, optimizing her intestinal microbiome, which is what drives the development of a healthy intestinal microbiome in a fetus before they're even born. That's what kind of central mechanism this light hitting these non-image forming retinal cells. Babies can do it early second trimester.
Oh my goodness, that I'm blown. My mind is blown with this information because I was going to ask how long. So it's 2 minutes within the
2
first
or
3
more minutes, that's all it
hours,
takes. Yep.
within 3 hours of sunrise.
Ideally. Now, there's other times of the day is nice. There's other kind of wavelengths that are nice, but the first 3 hours is the most therapeutic. Yep.
And with the abdomen, just upper abdomen, full abdomen from below
Just
belly button.
abdomen.
So you
That's
can go
why I
up.
think
Women
crop
can go out
tops
in the
need to
sport.
come back into
Yep.
style. Everybody needs a crop top, at least the first 3 hours of the day.
First 3 hours a day, go stand in your yard for at least 2 minutes within
Yeah.
3 hours of sunrise, or throughout the day. Oh my
In
goodness.
this mice model, they did this where they used infrared light. Now, the sun is the best, but they used infrared light and they 2 minutes, 5 times in one day. They saw immediate change that day in the intestinal microbiome. Immediate. And even though they didn't do it after that one day, changes were maintained a month later. So this is
Wow.
like immediate change and maintain that kind of stuff.
Amazing.
Really powerful.
That is extremely powerful. Oh my word. Where can individuals find out more about what you do, more about this information, more about how to help improve either estrogen dominance or any of the autoimmune diseases that we kind of mentioned and that you deal with?
Yeah, so my website is drdavidbilstrom.com. And on there, I write a lot of blog posts. Like we just released one about this photobiomodulation. I think we entitled it Notes from Paris. Which sounds lovely, doesn't it? Everybody should want to read that, right? Oh, over 150 different videos on my YouTube channel about this stuff, and everyone is based on the science. People need to know it's not just one person's opinion. This is the science. I had all these articles I talked about in Paris, including a little light hitting the mouse's tummy, including light hitting the eyes, going to the suprachiasmatic nucleus. This is what happened to the gut, and all these journals. And pretty much I'm always like, hey, this is what this scientific journal article says right here as I do the videos. And we have courses, including I really encourage everybody to do the free online educational email course, which is 7 emails. Each one takes a deep dive into these central mechanisms, including one all about estrogen dominance, because it is so important. Only a 6 to 8 minute read each, but it'll give people, we really want to teach people so that you know where this stuff comes from and you're actually in a position to fix it yourself.
I love it. Before we go, do you have any wise words of wisdom to leave us with, besides all the information you just gave us?
Oh, yeah. I would say that never let somebody tell you and believe it that they don't know where this stuff comes from and they don't know how to reverse it. Okay, they may not know that, but truly, when we talk today here, Heather, I think people should get the impression like, oh my gosh, my body is so smart. If I'm not feeling well, it's not because my body's not trying to fix this. It's not because my body doesn't know how to fix this. It's ready. But if you can just get out of the way, what's gotten in the way, the body's like, all right, I've been waiting maybe for years for this opportunity. You start fixing stuff. The body's just so smart.
That it definitely is. And the more I dive deep, take dives into the body, I realize how we are miraculous beings. And our body does want to heal itself. And it can if we literally get out of our own way.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bilstrom, for taking us on this enlightening journey into estrogen dominance and autoimmune diseases. All of the links can be found in the show notes. Thank you, listeners, for spending your time with us today. If you found a nugget of wisdom or a moment of empowerment, my mission is accomplished. Do you know someone that could benefit from this information? Please share Embracing Flow with them. Until next time, my friends, love hard, laugh often, and as always, be vividous. See you soon.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Embracing Flow. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show, submit a rating and review, and share it with your friends. Visit my website to receive your free PDF on 4 ways to decrease PMS. The link is in the show notes. Until next time, love hard, laugh often, and as always, be vividous.
information shared on the Embracing Flow podcast is for educational purposes only. It does not constitute medical advice.